So this is my father. I think I've shown this before for Grandparents' Day. I have a Grandparents' Day post. Um, so that's him before the turning points, before he made the harder decisions in his life. Um, so welcome to the bar. I think this is Tru.F.Lo.S number 17 or 18. I can't recall. They start to stack up after a while like Jenga. Um, so Father's Day is next week. And I'm going to talk about two fatherly. One is my actual father, and then a fatherly figure before we end, where we clip out. I'm going to try to say positive things and then negative things. Okay. So my dad, Demetrio, as he was called, as he was born, the name of Jesus, was born in, I think it was February 16th, 1944. Okay. He would be about 75, 76 years old. My mom is 77. That's a long time. So he grew up, my grandmother, his mom, dressed him up as a little girl for 4 years of his life, which was fucked up. Now, one time, he mentioned his brother to me. I asked him about it, and then he said none of his business. I mean, none of my business. It's like, well, why couldn't I have asked? Well, what was the point of telling me about my uncle if I didn't have a right to know? I'm not fucking TMZ. I'm not some random stranger. I'm not the government. I'm your son, your only son. You couldn't tell me about your brother. So my mom had to fill in the blanks. My dad had a brother who was abusive. Maybe he called him a faggot. Maybe he called him stupid because he dressed up like a little girl. But that wasn't his fault. His mom imposed that upon him. And he had a hard time in school. He didn't make friends. He got hazed. He got bullied. He got heckled. And he got disrespected. And he was very, very good in school. I mean, it's the story of a lot of very talented people in life. You know, you hear the stories like Joe Rogan or Bill Burr or somebody, you know, and they're great now. But back then, they were like nobodies to everybody else. They were the ones everybody heckled. Everybody made fun of. Everybody wetback eyes, nigger eyes, kike eyes, dago eyes, Jap eyes, and made them less than human because they wouldn't get with the program. So that was difficult. Now, he had a hard time in school. But the thing was, he wanted something. He wanted to be loved. Just like my second sister wanted to be loved. Marlo, who we'll talk about later on this year. So he eventually met my mom at the age of, I think he was 13 and she was 14. All right? So they were the only people that they had. My dad literally had no friends. My mom literally had no friends. She never finished. I know she finished high school. It was Humphreys High School. But I don't believe she finished college. I think she took a couple of courses. She told me this one time. This is just from what she told me. So my dad went through the motions, okay? He was a man who was willing to get good grades. I don't believe that he got perfect A's in school. I don't believe that because of the way I was poorly performing in school. I believe he got A's in where he thought he could, but in other courses, he just didn't care. That's my interpretation. Because if you were really good at what you did, we wouldn't have lived in East LA. We would have lived in a nicer area. We would have lived with educated people instead of stupid, thuggish people all the time. What would be the point? So that's harsh. So my dad was the kind of person that was willing to work hard. And he was willing to put his time and effort and work hard jobs. He worked as a mortician. Then he worked at Hughes Aircraft, which is an aircraft like, if you think about what Homer Simpson does, he goes, like the needles go up and down. He goes, That was his job for 20, 30 years. He did Hughes Aircraft, Valley Tactical when I was a child. My brother and I were born. I had two brothers. One died at 3 months, and I have my other brother, right? And he died at 9. He died at 11, and I was 9. Then he worked at AVO. No, he worked at AVO, Valley Tactical, then McDonnell Douglas. So he shifted from corporation to corporation. And then he got laid off. Then my mom got him to work as a special ed assistant teacher. Those are thankless jobs. At times, you're working with Down syndrome, autistic children who cannot put words together. They can't tell you what day it is. They don't understand Black Lives Matter. They don't even understand what the color black is, or blue, or yellow. They don't understand. They cannot clean up after themselves. So that was and it was a rough job, because it was the kind of job where if you touch those kids inappropriately, and the news these days, they will highlight every predator at your school. Watch your kids. Not my kids. You got to watch out for these people, and a lot of them are perverts. But my dad these kids were not right in the head. They were born not right in the head, and so some of them were this tall. They weren't little kids. They were this big, and they could knock you down. And if they did something inappropriate, my dad would have no choice but to body block or pin them down. But to a parent, ooh, no, you better not do that. They'll get in your face. So that could be hard. So it was a thankless job, because you could get sued by the parents any time of the day. So I am appreciative of all the hard work he had done. And even the good grades, he went back to college to get a better job, which he never did. He went back to school at the age of, I want to say 48. 48. And then he kept going, getting diplomas. He got his teaching credentials. He got his associates. He got his bachelor's degree, but he never got his master's. He got summa cum laude, the highest achievement. Like valedictorian. Like you're the highest, you're almost a member of Mensa. Just a couple of more grades, just a couple of more achievements. But my dad never passed his SATs. In the way that he made choices, he was a loser. He wasn't a loser that he worked hard for his kids and put money, put food on the table and all this stuff. It's like the end of I Never Sang for My Father with Gene Hackman, where the dad, I think it's Melvin Douglas, this old school actor that nobody really cared about until he later on played the old man, played the dad. Melvin Douglas plays Gene Hackman's dad and says, I put clothes on your back, I put food on the table and all this stuff. But he was very narcissistic. And he was a great mayor, but now he's consumed in grief, right? And so Gene Hackman, told him, hey, his wife was dying and nothing was going right, and you don't care, you care only about yourself. For my dad, I could never do enough. At the beginning, the first 5 years of my life, he was nice to me as he possibly could be. But I remember seeing my sisters cry in tears. That was harsh. Because my dad would just stomp around the floor, and my sister would be on her knees crying. My oldest sister, by the way, who has this sort of rhino skin, sangre de frio, right? But she cried, she bawled, and she was in her late teens. My sisters were upset. They were kind of crying too, but they were sweeping and picking up. And my dad was in a really bad mood, probably fighting over nothing, probably nonsense. Which is like, there are some battles you just have to pick. Don't pick a battle that's not worth a damn. That's not going to get us much, right? It's like Twitter, the cancel culture on Twitter. So that was the way my dad was, and honestly, I felt like, what was going to happen here. So my brother died in '87, and my dad was trying to I remember times where he would tell me to eat my food every 5 minutes. I remember one time he was trying to shove food down my throat at 6 or 7 years old, because he was impatient for me to finish. Hey, I was like any other kid. My dad did not think about, it's one thing to play house, and it's one thing to say, well, it's time to get married, it's time to have kids, it's time to do this. But it's like, who's benefiting from this? We're the ones paying for it. I remember a story my mom told me that my dad almost hit her. I think he did hit her at least one time. And that was rough. So yeah, when my brother died, my dad tried to make me eat every minute, like I wasn't eating fast enough. And he blamed my brother's death on me, like it was somehow my fault that he died. He died of AIDS. He died of pneumonia. Go fuck yourself. It's not my damn fault. And then you get to the part about when I started Bosco, well, that's the name of the school. When I went to a high school for boys, I'm no longer there, right? But when you get to a school, I'm just thinking about it right now. That was the worst part of my life, going to a all-boys high school. And my dad would drive me every day from age 14 to age 17. And that was rough. My dad had hit me in the past whenever I got bad grades in the third grade. It wasn't until the third grade. My dad was always smoking and drinking all the time. And he would spank me, just for whatever bad grades I got because I wasn't doing well. Because this was a man that didn't pay attention. For him, it was about his old-fashioned cameras, his Brownie cameras, his cameras from the 1930s, 1920s, making cameras, his guns, because he had a huge gun collection, and also his, how do you say it, his history books and his history figures. So my dad lived in the Civil War. He lived in 1776. He lived in ancient Egypt. He lived in his Smith & Wessons, his Colts, his Rugers, and his cameras. And he actually made bullets he made his own bullets for the guns. He had the weights. He would put gunpowder. I felt like that world of his was completely over there, and I'm over here. It was like it was like he was saying, I regretted getting married all those years ago. So it's your fault that I got married. Even though I made you and I can break you, I'm just going to impose my will upon you. The back of his hand, the back of his fists, right? And that was tough. And he would use his dogs. He had these blue tick coonhound dogs, or any kind of poinsettia dogs, any kind of hunting dog. He had just to flip off everyone else. And he had a house that was in the back that would stink of dog and dog hair. He would have classical music on, classical music. Okay, we had a radio station full of classical music. He would have history books full of dust on the shelf. You could breathe in dust, cement, chalk, old dirt. His gun collection, his bullet making table, and his cameras. That was his whole world. And when I went to an all-boys school, all-boys high school, I was going through my dad's verbal and physical abuse. I mean, even the first times I got abused, he would pull me by the hair and said, "You're getting bad grades in school?" And other times, it was like I wouldn't do a certain assignment right, or I'd get an F. And go, "I'll give you one of these." Oh yeah, it was fucking real. So, enough of that. I got all Fs, and eventually the last time he tried to really hurt me, besides the fact that he slapped me a few times when he took a drink. He took a drink because I wasn't shooting at the rifle range the way he wanted me to shoot. He dragged my sisters to shoot. He dragged me to shoot. I've told this story before, but this is Father's Day. So, having said all that, it's really like, I look at it now and it's like, I don't need to do that, right? So, the last time my dad really assaulted me was when, and I have to admit this, I forged my mom's name to sign for a um, to sign a piece of paper, to sign a document, like to sign something, right? And I think my teacher confronted me about it, saying it wasn't my mom's signature. Because look, I was 17. I'm going to get bad grades in school. What 17-year-old didn't try to pull some bullshit to avoid, the back of a kid? I still remember America's Most Wanted, where this black dad, he happened to be black, assaulting his kids with a shovel or in some reenactment. I don't know if that was true, but some parents can get really violent. If you lied to your parents and your parents were violent, yeah, I'd get the fuck out of there, motherfucker. Just get the fuck out of there. So that was rough. Sure was. So he used an old-fashioned flogging with the razors with a razor strap, the kind you use to sharpen razors. He used it on me at 17, and I was this close to getting the cops called on him. And then he had a change. He had a change of heart. He had changed his ways, even though by this time, at the age of what? Let me think about that. 51 years old. He had diabetes. He was always heavily breathing because he had worked at McDonnell Douglas, breathing in all the airplane fuel. Up, like when you're breathing in butane or some sort of gas, you're going to get sick. Well, he got sick from that. And he was smoking, and then he stopped at some point, and then he was drinking, and he stopped at some point. I remember the last times he got mad at me, I had a C, not an F, but a C in history in junior college, and my dad chose that fight to pick. Remember I said about pick your battles? So he picked the stupidest battles. While other kids were committing credit card fraud or stealing their dad's car, stealing their mom's car, defacing property or joining gangs or dealing in drugs or assaulting people or killing people, I was at fucking home most of my life. Even when I was in my 20s, I was the nigger at home doing what he was told. Yes, sir. No, sir. Don't hit me, sir. That was me. And where was my reward? Oh, here it is. That's the reward. Remember I told you, Charlie Brown working out, pumping those legs. Now he's ready to kick the football. Guess what happens? Guess what Lucy does, right? So yeah, that was rough. The last time my dad talked to me, my sister had divorced her, or she separated from her husband. She wasn't divorcing him yet. And she stayed at our house. Now my sister at that point was 37 years old. She was ready. I mean, she didn't divorce my brother-in-law until, who's nobody now, until 39. I think that's correct. Let me double check. That might not be right. Yeah, 30, like 2004. So that was a mess. So there were times where my dad would just pick his battles. He would take me to that small back house where all his music was, and his classical music, and his dog hair, and his dog, and try to, intimidate me. We have ways of making you talk, right? So between that and the bullies I suffered at school and the hazers, and I suffered the same thing he suffered, right? Now he died from all those complications I told you in 2002. I didn't shed a tear. I didn't cry. When you think about your dad, I hope everybody has a nicer dad than mine. I hope you can sit and have a drink with your dad. I hope you can have a smoke with your dad. If not, I feel for you. I know exactly what it's like. I volunteered at a children's courthouse. Do Black Lives Matter? I don't know. But one thing's for sure, the children matter. And when I saw black people acting out at a children's courthouse, the kids came before any black person. And if the kids are black, that's great. Fantastic. But the children come before anybody else because they need us to guide them. However, not all of us are designed to get married and have kids. Look what my dad did. Learn from this. Those of you who are truly forced and alone, learn from the mistakes of my father. Learn from my mistakes of trying to get a girlfriend. I wanted a girlfriend all the time. I simped a lot. In some ways, I may still do that, but I don't do it as much as I used to do it. I now try to balance my life and focus on me. And when I want to look at a girl, look, I haven't touched a female in a while, okay? So simping is at this much, okay? So it's going to happen, okay? But I'm trying to be a better person. And you're trying to be a better person. But do not knock up these females and feel that you're going to have to marry them and have kids with them because you're going to end up like my dad. Word of warning. So I just don't think about him. I used to have bad dreams. He'd come back from the dead. And now I just don't think about it. So 20 minutes in, let me just end with a more positive father figure. And I think you might know who this is, if I can get him correctly. That's Denny O'Neill. He's got these comic books. He passed away earlier this week at the age of 81. So let me see if I have the... Actually, no. There they are. Now, Denny O'Neill, I never met him. I actually commented on one of his final blogs before his wife passed away in 2017. Denny O'Neill and Neil Adams too. These two men changed the way the Batman comic books. He created Ra's al Ghul. I don't know if he created Optimus Prime. I heard somewhere he created Optimus Prime or gave the name of it. But he helped create Ra's al Ghul. I think he killed off Batwoman, the original Kathy Kane Batwoman. But yeah, when I think about these comic books, when I think about this is dealing with social injustice. For me, I'm always in between. Sometimes I agree with Candace Owens. Other times I agree with Dave Chappelle. Other times I agree with Joe Rogan or some left or right-wing people. But politicians are harder to agree with. Omar Epps, great movie actor, he says, racism is so played out. Yeah, I mean, racism is played out. But Denny O'Neill covered a lot of things about racism, about the man, about corporations, about looking at your fellow neighbor. He was very much a hippie in that time. And so, love to you. I wish we could have talked a little. I wish you could have responded to my posts, but I gave him some love. I responded to a couple. If you ever saw my posts on, I think, his Comic Mix blog, you knew I was there. If you saw me there, you knew I was there. I was going to post a video before about what happened to him, what happened to his blogs. But I think after his wife, Mary Fran, passed away, I think he kind of shut down. Like he did the occasional interview, but I think a part of him died when she died. And then this whole mess with the rioting, and there are peaceful protests, yes, and then there's rioting. And it's like, where's the sense anymore? And maybe it hurt him. Maybe it hurt him that he couldn't make sense of things. I mean, if you go back to his blogs, he criticized Riverdale, Batman v Superman, the CW shows. So he kept up with things. I mean, he kept up with the times as best he could. So I'll leave it at that. Those of you who have good dads, you can be yourself around your family. I give love to you. You're not TFL. You're not true, forced, and alone. But you have people that you see all the time, and they're in your life. Some of us are not that lucky. I didn't pick these people. I was born to these people. But people like Denny O'Neill, who changed Batman, who changed Green Arrow. Thank you, Denny O'Neill. Good night, sir. And your work is not for naught. I even love the Superman and Wonder Woman stories. All right. Take care. I got some more work to do.